Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to discuss how to connect with your father especially when it's a frustrating experience. Note, in case we got a question here from a listener who is in the throes of connecting with, of reaching out with his father for the sake of managing his emotional issues. And he says here, it's not easy. After many phone calls, I am now able to be more vulnerable, frustrated, honest, and assertive with him. I mean, he's like just more open in general with his father, so it's going better, but his father is not reciprocating. So what to do? And this is frustrating that his father doesn't reciprocate. So his father's closed off. His father talks around the issue, dances around the issue. There's a lot of fluff talk, which is a creative way that we avoid talking about what we need to talk about. And this listener is frustrated because of this. So how does he manage this issue? And I just want to say that I think it matters, first off, to talk with your father, because that's where a lot of our emotional issues are. This isn't like some Freudian religion thing where Freud says you got to talk with your father. Freud says a lot of your issues start from your mother and your father. But often in therapy I see guys who... I don't say they have a flat affect, but they talk normally and consistently, and then they start talking about their father or their mother, and they really start to get animated, and it's very clear there are issues here around your father. There are emotional issues here around your father that affect you in other areas of your life. With your father, they're going to affect you in areas of your life that have to do with authority. So at work, communicating with other men at work, communicating with your boss, communicating with other women, or women to the extent that you view women as authority figures in your life. So we clear emotional issues around our father, which is where a lot of our issues with authority stem from, and other areas where we have a difficult time with authority just kind of take care of themselves, right? It's about looking at the cause, the root experience, where these issues ultimately come from. We clear those up through talking with our father, processing emotions with our father, becoming more aware of our emotions with our father. That's all that processing means. And then these other issues in our life will tend to work themselves out. So I think it can be helpful in some instances, not every instance, but in some instances, for guys to create a better connection with their father. This is what this gentleman is doing, but he's frustrated with the experience. So what does he do? Well, I think the issue here you have with your father is right here in your question. So you're more honest. So things are going in the right direction here, clearly. You're more honest, you're more open with your father. You can be more honest and more assertive with your father. And you say here, and I'm looking for him to do the same, to drop the fluff talk. Right? And that's the issue. That is the issue that's going on here, is because you want your father to reciprocate what you are doing. And the implication there is, in order for me to overcome my issues with my father, I need him to be as open as I am with him. And thankfully that is not the case. Oh boy, if our psychological health hinged on our fathers or other people in our lives putting the same input that we give, or reciprocating every time that we express ourselves in a healthy way with them, then emotional health would be impossible. But thankfully, your emotional health only hinges on how well you express your emotions with your father, how connected you are with your father, which does in part involve expressing emotions with him, but involves other things too. I would say that this is, in a sense, thinking that your father needs to act in a certain way for you to manage your emotional issues. I mean, that's in a sense what you're saying. I'm not going to be who I really need to be in my life until my father acts in a certain way, until my father reciprocates, this emotional work that I'm trying to put in this relationship. This is a manifestation of the father blame, the parental blame issue. It's a subtle manifestation, but in a sense what you're doing is you are blaming your father. You're blaming your father and how he acts now on your frustration, on your outcome. And yet, I've said this a million times. I need to say it a million more. I need to remind myself of this because it's important, is that I don't want you, right? Connection with your father isn't a good relationship with your father. It is creating the best possible connection you can with him. Right? So it's not about perfection. I'm going to go back to what we talked about last week. It's about making some kind of progress in our relationship with our Father, but it's not even about progress, right? It's just about engagement with the process that leads to progress, that leads to perfection, but it's not three separate things. It's all one and the same. When we work on the process, that is progress, and that is ultimately what perfection, psychological perfection is. Which isn't, oh, look, I have all my emotional issues handled and I'm some holy man on the top of a mountain. It's, I have managed my emotional issues. I still have emotional issues, and that's okay. I know how to manage them in the future. And when new challenges present new emotional issues, I'm going to know how to manage them. It may not be fun, and it may not be, it may be a lot of frustration. It may be painful, but I am at least able to do it. So ultimately what we're talking about here, there's an acceptance, a blaming of the Father, that there's a boundary issue here. I'm just saying the same thing in a bunch of different ways. There's a boundary issue. You are trying to force your Father to be a certain way. Not force, but boy, your life would sure be a lot better if your Father was a certain way. You want to get him to open up. Let me tell you, getting people to open up, especially when they're not ready to, it is impossible. I get people to open up in therapy with me because people come to me once they realize, oh, my life cannot continue on the way that it's going. I need to make a change. I'm at a place, usually it's a place that's, really painful, way more painful than it needs to be. Most people who sign up for therapy and start this process, they all go, oh, I wish I would have done this a year ago or 2 years ago when I really knew that I needed this and I didn't really want to let it to get to this point where it just got way more painful than it needed to be. And even in that, and so people come to me and say, hey, Mark, I need help. And here, let me give you money. And even then, after all that, it's still difficult to get them to open up. It still takes a few tries. So you thinking that you're going to that you're going to help your Father open up by you being more open. Yeah, good luck. Good luck hanging your happiness and your sense of serenity and wholeness on your Father acting in a certain way. Oh boy, it's not going to happen. So how do we work through this? Right? So there's frustration here. You're doing the right things. You're opening up with your Father, but there's frustration here. So how do we do this? It's a boundary issue. It's an issue with acceptance. Well, the first thing you do, when there's a boundary issue or when you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, or you're trying to process your emotional issues and it's a little bit more frustrating than you think it needs to be. Thankfully, talking with our fathers isn't the only way we have of processing our emotional issues. There are, typically easier ways to do that. And if you sign up with therapy with me, I have this whole program that I do. It involves an online course, and we go through a bunch of different ways to process your emotional issues. So if talking with your Father, which is just like one sliver of that, isn't working, or you find yourself frustrated, or you really just need a break, then, go back to previous steps and work on those. It's like, yeah, so I have workout analogies galore here. And there's also the climbing Mount Kilimanjaro analogy. I don't know why Mount Kilimanjaro, but okay, so you have altitude sickness. You're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. You have altitude sickness. Is there anything wrong with you? Do you stop climbing? Is there something wrong with Mount Kilimanjaro? No. Your body is simply not acclimated to this altitude. Maybe you need to go back down to a lower altitude, take a break, take a little breather. We're still managing the issue, just in a slightly less egregious way, but we're still managing the issue. The altitude sickness, your body is not acclimated, right? There's a neurological stress here of your Father not reciprocating that is bothering you. And so if you need to take a break, then yeah, you got to take a break, The other thing to do is and I tweeted this earlier this week, and in response to getting this question, is so there's an issue of parental blame. Right? My Father is not acting in a certain way, so I have an issue because my Father is not acting in a certain way. And the cold, hard truth that nobody likes, but it's the truth, it is a capital T truth, and that is to really manage blame you have for your parents, or blame you have for what your parents represent, whether it's the grad school you attend, the government, your job, your boss, your friends, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever. In order to really overcome that blame you have and to take responsibility, you don't just take responsibility for yourself. That's easy. What you do is you take responsibility for your father's or your mother's sins against you. And I know 95% of you, when I just said that, you interpreted that as you are at fault for your mother's and your father's sins against you. And that is, of course, not what I'm saying. But your father raised you in a certain way, and it probably wasn't the best way, because it's impossible. It's impossible to raise a child perfectly. So your father did something that hurt you, that put a hurt inside of you, right? And you are not at fault for that hurt now being inside of you, but that hurt is inside of you, and you are an adult, or at least somewhat an adult. Even if you're 14, 15, 16, you begin to develop a conceptual faculty. Even though you're not legally an adult, I don't think you should be legally an adult, you are responsible for managing that emotional issue. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Yes, your father sinned against you. Yes, your father it continues to sin against you, as you're doing all you can to reach out and connect and be vulnerable and express yourself and assertive. Like, how do I express my anxiety with vulnerability, and how do I express my aggression with kindness around my father, right? That's what being vulnerable is. That's what being open in connection is. And your father's not reciprocating. How is that your responsibility? And this dovetails, I think, into the second part of this listener's question, which I guess I didn't mention, but he asked, do men crave connection more with their mothers or their fathers? Sounds like he is craving more connection with his father here. And I think it's not about men craving more connection with our mothers or fathers, or women creating more connection with one or the other parent, but it's about the parent that we blame the most is usually the one that we crave that connection with. And usually it's not connection so much as validation, right? Because our parents have done something to us that hurt us. And that's just what happens, and that's just something that we all have to square with as children and as parents. I'm a parent now, and I'm looking at this kid thinking, I'm going to do something that hurts this kid. I really do all I can to manage my issues. But that's going to happen. And it's no fun, but, and she's going to blame me for that, and it's no fun, but it's just about overcoming that need to blame our parents for doing that, overcoming that validation, because what ultimately is, oh, my father hurt me in this way. How that made me feel less than I really, quote, should feel, right? That makes me feel not good enough. So in a sense, I need validation from my father to make up for that loss of self-esteem. And that is a difficult thing to square with. But by processing these issues in this way, that's how we do it. Another way, right? Another way to do this is to manage this issue, to no longer blame your father, but rather to connect with him, is to realize that what your father does, most likely, not in every case, but what your father does that frustrates you is usually what you do. It is your issue. So your father, although he may have committed some more egregious wrongs in the past, now his wrong is not opening up. Now you have to see that when your father does that, you have to see that as your issue. And typically it's not your father's issue either, right? I mean, it's, the stuff, it can be generational, and he is carrying over issues that he had with his father onto you, and, it's a sense of being closed off. He's taking these issues that he has not processed from his own father, and he's dumping them onto you. And you got to realize, oh, my father being closed off, this is me being closed off. And I know it's me being closed off because I am closed off right now because I'm frustrated. Even because I'm frustrated by my father being closed off, I indicate here that I am not connecting with my father being closed off, because that's what I'm doing. Right? I'm closed off, my father's closed off. I'm closed off by being frustrated. Right? But I said that in a word jumble, but what I think you know what I mean. My frustration indicates I am closed off. Yes, my father's closed off. You're not wrong about that. You're definitely right. But you are closed off as well. So it's just about creating a better connection without trying to seek validation. That's, creating a boundary, managing dysregulated emotions. That's all we do here. We have a process. We have a process for doing this. So we do free consultations. If you want to find out more about it, go to animusempire.com/schedule. We'll get on the phone for 30 minutes. You'll let me know what's going on with you. I'll let you know if I'm able to help you. And if I am able to help you, I'll talk with you more about what we do here and how it will apply specifically to your situation. But generally what we do is, that the therapy works in three parts. The first part is we figure out exactly how you are mismanaging your emotions in a way that leads to these problems that you experience in your life. So with this listener's frustration, right? That's not his fundamental issue. I know it's not. There's an emotional mismanagement issue there that leads to his frustration or leads to his disconnection with his father. So we look at how you are specifically mismanaging your emotions, and we will get crystal clear about that, right there. I guarantee we'll be able to do that, and then we begin to process it. Then we begin to process this emotional issue, and I have tons of tools for that. And processing, it just means become aware of it. And then we have this emotional issue. You're crystal clear, like crystal clear about what this emotional issue is. You begin to process it, and then how it manifests in your life. Those symptoms, they in a sense gradually disappear. And becoming aware of the emotional issue, it isn't everything, but I would say 50%. It's about 50% of the processing, or 50% of your emotional issues can be processed fully just by becoming aware of them and going, oh, this is what I do. And then we continue, and then we have tons of tools and resources and online groups and whatever for helping you continue to process these emotional issues. So that's what we can do for you. animusempire.com/schedule. And I also want to say that, I think what this listener's, talking about here, this is a success. He's doing everything right. Right? He's more open. He's more assertive with his father. That is a success. Now, I think he's just a little bit frustrated because it's still painful. It's still painful because he feels that frustration of his father not reaching out in the same way that he's reaching out. But that's still a success. And sometimes we don't recognize success as readily because it comes wrapped in pain, or what we perceive to be pain, which of course we can still manage and process by working on these issues in the way that we do. I mean, he's still in pain, but whatever, he's on the path. But I know if he just continues to work through these issues in this way, it's going to get better. Like the Kilimanjaro analogy. Yeah, you're in pain. You have altitude sickness. Maybe you're coughing too much. But it's a success because you've never been to this elevation before. And if you need to go back down to a lower elevation to help your body acclimate, that's fine. It doesn't mean that the altitude sickness that you experience is some kind of failure. No, that's just what we expect. It's just kind of what we expect. So thank you guys. I'll leave it there. Like and subscribe, and always remember that any problem that you have with your father is ultimately a problem you have with yourself.